Welcome to Storytime with Elo. Yaa Trilogy Part 2, Yaa'S Revenge. Yaa's decision to return to Accra came quickly, almost recklessly. She couldn't stay in the village, not with the silence pressing in, not with the shame gnawing at her ribs. But the thought of going back made her stomach twist. She had left in the middle of the night, no word to anyone. Surely the scholarship office would mark her as unreliable, or worse, expel her altogether. She called them with shaking hands, expecting anger. Instead, the woman on the line urged her to return immediately. "You've already lost ground," she said briskly. "But it can be made up if you work. No more absences, no more excuses." Relief and dread tangled in her chest. Work harder, make up the time, prove herself again. She could do that. She had to. Her mother fussed as she packed, smoothing clothes into the trunk as though folding them tighter could keep Yaa safe. "Eat well this time," she murmured, avoiding her daughter's eyes. "And don't forget to rest." Her father lingered in the doorway, arms crossed. He said nothing at first, only watched as Yaa tied the rope around her trunk. Finally, in a voice low enough that her mother couldn't hear, he asked, "Are you certain?" Yaa's throat tightened. "I can't stay here." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Not approval, not disapproval, just resignation. Araba clung to her at the roadside, whispering, "Don't vanish again. At least send word." "I will," Yaa promised, though her voice caught. The trotro carried her down the dirt road, carrying her back toward the city she had sworn she would conquer. Her hands were clenched tight in her lap once again. She wasn't going back as a dreamer this time. She was going back as someone who had already bled. Yaa's key trembled in her hand as she slid it into the dorm door. Her heart banged in her chest as the lock clicked. The door swung open. Enam was sprawled across a bed in leggings and a bright yellow top, music pulsing low from her speaker. The moment her eyes landed on Yaa, she shot upright. "Hey, look who finally remembers she has a room." Her voice was sharp, almost breaking. She crossed her arms. "Do you know how many times I went looking for you? 3 weeks, Yaa. 3 weeks. And not a word." Yaa's throat went dry. She closed the door softly behind her, setting her trunk down by the wall. "I needed space." "Space!" Enam let out a humorless laugh. "This isn't a village where you disappear into the bush and no one asks questions. People notice. People talk. Do you have any idea what it was like? Everyone asking me where my roommate went?" "I didn't ask you to cover for me." "No, you didn't ask me anything at all." Enam's voice cracked on the last word. The air in the room thickened. Yaa turned away, untying the rope on her trunk, desperate to look busy. Her hands shook. The shirts inside smelled faintly of smoke from her mother's cooking fire. She folded and refolded them, pretending they mattered. A knock came at the open door. Kwame leaned against the frame, tall, steady, his brows drawn. His eyes flicked from Enam's flushed face to Yaa's rigid shoulders. "So it's true," he said quietly. "You back?" Yaa froze, then forced herself to glance at him. "I didn't think it mattered." "It matters," Kwame replied, his voice firm, but not unkind. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The three of them stood in a triangle of silence, the music from Enam's speaker fading into static. Enam broke first. Just tell us what happened. Enough of this ghost routine. Yaa shook her head violently. No. Yaa, Kwame started. I said no. The voice rang too loud in the small room, bouncing off the thin walls. Her chest heaved. I don't owe you any explanations. Enam slammed her palm on the desk, the sound sharp. You disappear in the middle of the night and you come back acting like nothing happened? You breaking, yeah. And if you don't talk, you'll drown. Kwame stepped closer, his tone softer. We're not here to judge. We're here because we care. But we can't help you if you shut us out. Yaa's nails dug crescents into her palms. The words clawed at her throat, jagged, tearing. She wanted to stay silent, to lock it all inside. But Enam's eyes burned fury, and Kwame's gaze held steady, unflinching, and the dam broke. It was Mensah, she answered. Enam's lips parted. Kwame's jaw clenched. Yaa's voice shook as she forced the rest out. He threatened my scholarship, locked the door. I couldn't stop him, and I... Her voice faltered. She pressed her hands to her face, choking back a sob. The silence was deafening. Enam moved first, kneeling in front of her, her voice shaking with rage. That bastard! That filthy bastard! Kwame's voice was low, controlled, but his fists were tight at his side. We'll make him pay for this. You're not alone anymore. Yaa, not now. Yaa lifted her tear-streaked face. For the first time since the night she fled, she wasn't carrying it alone. Yaa sat in the lecture hall again, the air heavier than she remembered. 3 weeks gone, and yet the walls still smelled of chalk dust and stale sweat. Her fingers curled around her notebook, damp with sweat. She could feel the eyes on her, whispers prickling at her back. She's the one who disappeared, the one who ran. Professor Mensah entered like a storm contained in human form. His glasses gleamed under the lights, his shoulders broad, his stride unhurried but commanding. Students hushed without him asking. Open your books, he began, his voice rolling across the room. Equations flowed from his chalk-like poetry, but Yaa couldn't hear the rhythm. Her pulse drowned everything else. Then he turned, scanning the room, and his gaze found her. Miss Yaa, he said, not loud, not soft, just enough for the syllables to cut the air. Why don't you solve this one for us? Yaa's throat closed. She rose slowly, her legs stiff, her mind blank. The numbers on the board blurred. She opened her mouth. Nothing came. A giggle erupted from somewhere in the back row, quickly stifled. Heat climbed up her neck. She forced out a string of words, half right, half nonsense. Mensah's smile was thin, amused. Rusty, are we? You've missed valuable time. She sank back into her seat, cheeks burning. Her pen scratched useless lines across her notebook as he moved on, but his voice carried to her in deliberate fragments. Scholarships, fragile things. Only the disciplined survive. When class ended, she tried to escape with the crowd, but he lingered by the door. As she passed, his low voice brushed her ear. You know what's at stake. Don't test me again. Her chest constricted. She walked faster, out into the sun, where the air at least allowed her lungs to expand. That evening, Enam found her hunched over a desk, staring at the same page for an hour. You're letting him break you. Yaa didn't look up. I'm catching up. Enam snorted. Catching up? You're barely eating. You can't breathe when he looks at you. This isn't catching up. It's drowning. Later, Kwame pulled up a chair across from her. His presence filled the space, calm but insistent. Just tell us what he said. Yaa's eyes flickered up, then down. He threatened my scholarship. He said, one complaint, one bad grade, and it's gone. Enam slammed her fist on the table. But that's blackmail. He's using your future to trap you. Kwame leaned forward, thinking. Then the answer is simple. We take away his power. Yaa's voice was small. How? He owns the classroom. He controls my grades. He can end me with a stroke of a pen. Kwame's gaze sharpened. Every man like him has a weakness, and Mensah's is his pride. He loves the spotlight, loves to be praised, admired. Enam's eyes widened. I've got it. A fake scholarship. Yaa blinked. What? Listen, we bait him, Enam said, excitement and fury mixing in her tone. We create a scheme, something shiny that flatters him, a chance for him to be recognized. He'll walk right into it. Kwame nodded. And while he's distracted, we gather the girls. All the others he's hurt. There is no way you're the only one, Yaa. And when the time comes, he won't just be caught. He'll be exposed. Yaa stared at them, her chest tight. Part of her wanted to scream, to tell them it was impossible. But another part, the part that had whispered to her under the mango tree, that part told her she would not let him win. She leaned toward the fire. Her hand trembled as she whispered, If we do this, he can't know. Not until it's too late. Enam's smile was fierce. Exactly. Kwame held her gaze steady. And in the meantime, you study, you rise, you remind yourself that your mind is still yours. You win on both fronts. Yaa felt something sharper than fear flicker inside her. Not joy, not peace, but resolve. This had to work. She had to claim her future back. They began in whispers, huddled in corners of the library, backs bent over notebooks that pretended to hold equations but instead carried strategy. Enam sketched logos with a stolen pen, her wild afro bobbing as she whispered, It needs to look official. Something sleek, prestigious. We'll call it the Pan-African Rising Scholars Program. Yeah, the Pan-African Rising Scholars Program. Sounds expensive, sounds global. Kwame leaned in, his voice steady. And it has to reach Mensah in the right way. Not too direct. We floated through the grapevine. A rumor first, then a student committee. Yaa listened, her heart pounding, torn between fear and the thrill of it. For weeks, she had been shrinking in silence. Now she was plotting, fighting. Their first move was subtle. Enam spread word of a new international partnership seeking nominations from respected faculty. A whisper to the right gossip in the dining hall, a printed flyer tucked onto the notice board, a careless comment in class, I heard Mensah is perfect for it. The effect was immediate. Within days, Mensah's eyes sharpened in the lecture. He adjusted his glasses more often, carried himself taller, as though already imagining the applause. Then came the invitation, an official-looking email drafted late at night by Kwame, sent from a fake address with a crest Enam had designed to look as though it belonged to some European foundation. It promised recognition, international connections, the chance to be the face of African academic excellence. Mensah bit hard. He called Yaa to his office. Her stomach twisted, but this time, when she stepped inside, she wasn't alone. Enam waited just outside, ready. Mensah smiled as he waved the email at her. Do you know who recommended me? Who whispered my name to them? His eyes gleamed. They say they want me to nominate one promising student to accompany me. Imagine, a scholarship within a scholarship. Yaa's blood ran cold, but she forced her face to stay neutral. That's an honor, sir. An honor you might share, he murmured, leaning closer. If you prove loyal. The word curdled in her ears. Loyal. But she nodded, tucking her fury behind a mask. Outside, Enam gripped her hand the moment she emerged. He's swallowing it whole. Kwame's lips tightened into something that wasn't quite a smile. Good. The higher he climbs, the harder the fall. The university buzzed with whispers of the Pan-African Rising Scholars Program. Students traded speculation in dining halls and corridors. Did you hear? Mensah might be the face of it. They say he's already been contacted. Imagine the recognition. Mensah basked in it. His lectures swelled with energy, his jokes sharper, his smile wider. He began dropping hints about international partnerships and new opportunities, letting his students connect the dots for him. Every nod of admiration fed him like wine. But behind the scenes, Enam and Kwame stoked the fire. They printed mock brochures, left them accidentally in the faculty lounge, and nudged the right gossipers to spread the tale further. Yaa played her part with clenched teeth. When Mensah called her to his office to boast of meetings and nominations, she sat stiffly, nodding as though in awe. Inside, her rage simmered. You see, Yaa, he murmured once, pacing like a general before battle. They recognize greatness, and with me you are fortunate. You stand close to it. Do not forget where your bread is buttered. She forced a thin smile, even as her stomach churned. But the cracks began to show. A girl from another department whispered to Enam late one night, her voice shaking. He did the same to me. Said my grades depended on him. I thought I was alone. Enam squeezed her hand. You're not. More followed. Quiet conversations in stairwells, bathroom stalls, empty classrooms. Each testimony a shard of glass, piecing together a weapon sharper than Mensah could imagine. Kwame documented everything. His neat handwriting turning whispers into evidence. One voice alone can be silence, he said grimly. But many together, that's a roar. Yaa threw herself into her studies with a new ferocity. Her nights were long, her eyes red, but her grades crept upward again. Each correct answer was a defiance. Each rising mark was armor. She would not let him take her future twice. The campus atmosphere shifted. Admiration for Mensah curdled into suspicion. Students who once praised him began trading uneasy glances. The scholarship had lifted him high now, hovered like a storm cloud, ready to break. And still, Mensah strutted, blind. The storm broke on a Thursday. That morning, whispers spread like brush fire. The Pan-African Rising Scholars Program had requested documentation. Mensah, chest puffed, strutted into his lecture hall, clutching a folder of his work, confident that glory was only a signature away. But by afternoon, the cracks split wide. An anonymous message circulated through the student forums, complete with screenshots of testimonies, snippets of emails, handwritten notes, trembling accounts from girls who had been cornered in his office. The rumor of the scholarship tangled with something darker, and suddenly admiration turned to suspicion, suspicion to outrage. By evening, the dean summoned Mensah. Students clustered in hallways, murmuring, their eyes following him as he passed. He adjusted his glasses, straightened his tie, but sweat prickled at his temples. Yaa sat in the library, her heart thudding as her phone buzzed. Enam's voice burst through the line. It's working. They're investigating him. Kwame joined them moments later, his face grave. The university can't ignore this. Too many voices, too much noise. They'll have to act. For the first time, Yaa allowed herself to breathe. The next day, the walls of the campus echoed with protest. Girls spoke openly now, their voices shaking but strong. He threatened me. He failed me when I refused. He made me believe I was nothing without him. Each testimony piled higher, a mountain impossible to ignore. Mensah tried to fight. He stormed into class, slamming his books on the desk, his voice booming. Lies! Jealousy! Do you think brilliance doesn't attract envy? But the room was silent, his words bouncing back hollow. Not a single student defended him. By the weekend, his office door was locked, his name scrubbed from the faculty board. Rumor said he had been suspended pending formal investigation. Others whispered he would never return. Yaa walked across campus with Enam and Kwame by her side. For the first time in months, the weight on her shoulders lightened. She had survived him. More than that, she had undone him. Yet triumph was complicated. Every cheer in the hallway, every whispered "well done," scraped against her scars. She was not healed. She was not whole. But she was no longer trembling. Kwame slowed his steps beside her. You did it, he said quietly. Her lips curved, not quite into a smile, but close. We did it. And though she kept her arms folded, though her guard was still high, she let him walk beside her. For now, that was enough. Stay tuned for part 3, Yaa'S Redemption.